Am I the a-hole for ruining my wife's cancer survivor party? Story: I, 35M, am a very private person. I have no social media, don't want my wife, 32F, posting photos of me, although I don't tell her not to. Just don't ask her to post me. Celebrating Father's Day or my birthday, I don't like attention on me and prefer to keep things low-key whenever I can. So keeping that in mind, I was diagnosed with an extremely curable type of skin cancer. It was caught very early on, and I never felt scared for my life in any way, shape, or form. I'm an engineer, and I think analytically, and wasn't scared with a diagnosis with a 0.03% fatality rate. Still, I told my wife, of course, and she was terrified. We talked through it and told her my doctor was very optimistic and said we have caught it early on, etc. None of it seemed to help, but I tried. After a while, I told her that we shouldn't tell our kids, 5F and 7F. My wife wanted to tell them, but I was adamant about that. I'm not even sure they would understand what we're talking about. Reluctantly, she agreed not to. About a week later, I get a call from my dad, asking about my cancer. Turns out, my wife posted on Facebook about my cancer that morning. I called her and wasn't happy that she posted my business, and his behind the "you didn't say I couldn't post it, just not to tell the kids" excuse. There is no way she would think I wanted that posted online no matter what I said. So she took it down and time went by. Very quickly, I was in remission with my skin cancer and my doctor told me, word for word, "We don't like to say you're cured, but you're cured." I told my wife and she was ecstatic. She told me she was worried all this time, I could tell, and glad we put this all behind us. I thought we could put this all behind us too. This weekend I'm coming home on Friday. I see a lot of cars parked on the street, some in my driveway. I couldn't think of any birthdays or anniversaries I missed, but went in anyway. It was a party for my remission diagnosis. I was mortified at this. She's never done anything like this, and we've talked about how I would hate a surprise party multiple times. I asked what this is for, said, "I'm sorry, but I didn't know you planned this. I'm just coming back for some files and heading back to work." It was a lie. I gathered up some meaningless files in my office and said thanks to everyone for coming and left to go back to my office, messing around on my phone until everyone left. My wife knew I was lying and we fought that night, and I told her I don't know what's gotten into her. But she knows I would never want this, and she doesn't get to make a big deal out of something personal I never wanted to be public in the first place. We've been cold this whole week, and my brother said I'm TA since I told him I just pretended to go to work. So, am I the a-hole for not wanting to celebrate beating my cancer? Response 1. NTA, your wife completely disregarded your feelings re personal privacy. She should take down the Facebook post immediately and apologize for ambushing you with the party. Reply 1, in her defense, she did take down the Facebook post when I called her, without my asking her to take it down. Reply 2, that's good, but she still sprung an unwanted party on you. She was genuinely scared for your health and wanted to celebrate her joy. That you are now in remission, however dismissed your preference for personal privacy. You didn't yell or make a scene, just made an excuse to go back to work. Your wife feels embarrassed, but that's on her, not the a-hole. Reply 3, she was only genuinely scared because she didn't listen to her husband or his doctors. He was never in any danger. Reply 4, maybe playing the devil's advocate, but as a cancer survivor that had decent odds. Not great, but decent. This sounds to me like taking something way out of proportion to bring focus upon yourself more than to the person actually dealing with cancer. I am also quite private and open up about those types of things with chosen few. If my partner had done something like to me at the time, I would have been much less pleasant than OP Reply 5. More than the surprise party, she obviously shared his medical information with everyone she invited. That's a huge betrayal that occurred several times in this whole scenario. Response 2, NTA, does your wife even know you? I find her behavior to be really odd and inappropriate. You should not have to command or request her not to post about you. It should come naturally to her to already know what you'd be okay and not okay with, and be no to ask if she wants to communicate something about you. It's not giving me great vibes about your wife, to be honest. I cannot tell if she's overdramatic to the point of being a liability and totally irrational, or if she's a bit of an attention hound. Either way, her behavior is not okay, and having a serious talk with her about this is very reasonable. I would guess others find her behavior strange too. There must have been something a bit off for your parents in finding out about your cancer through social media. You need to be able to trust your spouse. In some ways, they should be like an extension of yourself, in that you should be able to trust that they won't do something they know you would not want. Missteps happen, of course, but this is her deciding she wants to handle your medical situation a different way than you want to handle it, which is obviously inappropriate of her. Reply 1. Odd and inappropriate is understatement of the year. I personally find her behavior completely effing disgusting. She's actually used the husband having cancer as a way for her to get attention. I'm appalled. This is some of the worst and most insensitive behavior I have ever seen on this sub, and there's been a lot. I think OP should have some real alarm bells at the moment, and that this behavior needs addressing, and quickly. She needs to be put in her place a little, not in a horrible way, but in a way in which she understands just how out of place she's acted. Reply 2, also posting that when she knew his parents weren't even told yet. Who the F does that? Imagine finding that out through social media. But then, I also have to ask OP, was he going to tell his parents? I get it is treatable and a low fatality rate, but he is an engineer and a mind of science. Not everyone is. It's more emotional and terrifying for others, and it is their right to feel that way, though not to share his business publicly or make it about themselves. Reply 3. He was probably waiting until the treatments were over to tell them. Why worry your parents when you really don't have to? Reply 4. I used to think this way until I had adult kids, and now I tell my parents so much more, just as I hope my kids would for me. I understand the thought process because I've done it, and wouldn't be angry or hurt, but I would be sad to find out one of my kids had been through something and hadn't told me. I even get a little ping to find out they've had a bad flu or a twisted ankle. OP, not the a-hole. Your wife sounds like my nightmare spouse, and I hope you all can make it through this. Some situational counseling might be useful to make her have to process what you are telling her. Reply 5. I think this is a weird space, though. OP mentions an extremely small chance of severe damage or death, and while cancer overall is a scary thought, as was mentioned, I wonder if many have discussed what's significant enough to mention. Just the mention of cancer is enough to panic many, and on the other side of this coin, I can only imagine myself seeing my wife or partner panic enough to want to inform my kids of my impending doom and wonder how much else stress would come from even more of my loved ones knowing, especially if I see this as barely a blip on the radar. Excellent question, though, as well as another rude red flag from the wife. Response 3, NTA, she is acting selfishly and making your cancer about herself and ignoring your wishes. She should ask you before doing things of this nature. She is invading your privacy. Response 4, NTA. Has she always had main character syndrome? Because it seems like she's trying to get attention by using your cancer diagnosis/remission. Reply 1, that's what I was thinking. The cancer sounds like a tiny skin blip they surgically removed or something akin to that. Sure, I get the worry that it could turn into something worse, but her reactions the whole way make absolutely zero sense unless she wanted attention. Reply 2. Yeah, there are hundreds of thousands of people who regularly get cancerous skin cells removed. With skin, we tend to expose it to so much radiation without protection that it's pretty common our body can't keep up with the predictable cellular responses. She turned a non-issue. Normal occurrence into a cancer remission party. I don't blame OP for being mortified. So this was the equivalent of scratching your bumper on a post and then telling everyone you had a near-death car accident. Reply 3. My parents have had so many basal and squamous cell cancers removed, I'm now feeling like I need to throw a big party to celebrate their battles. Except that would be an insult to people who are actually battling cancer that can't be cut right off with no further treatment. Sure, they've had some facial scars that suck, but their lives were never in danger. Reply 4. Main character syndrome, that is a very good term. In actuality, it is an excellent term, very descriptive. Reply 5. So much for keeping it from the kids. No way they didn't overhear. Has she ever had HPV? If so, I'd throw her party for her body clearing it, laugh out loud, just kidding. It'd be no different than announcing she was pregnant before the first trimester. If OP wanted to share, he would've. She knows this. Not only did she not apologize, she turned it around on him. She sounds narcissistic. Response 5. Your wife is a trauma vulture, and a decidedly gross one at that. I hate Facebook and those that post crap like this on it even more. What's more, I'd never even dream of disrespecting my partner as blatantly as she has, thrice in this post alone. Not the a-hole by a landslide. OP, you handled this as graciously as one could given the circumstances. Reply 1. My cousin is like this. Her younger brother was dying, and she plastered pics of him in a coma hooked up to ventilator and other machines on Facebook. What about his privacy? He can't even consent. Same with her dad. She now makes motley posts about her dad and brother's deaths. Reply 2. I have a relative like this too. She actually posed for a picture with my cousin, her son's corpse, while he was in his coffin and posted it online. I can't imagine any other scenario where someone would take a picture of a mother with her son's corpse and give her a copy. It was the creepiest effing thing I ever saw. A friend of mine was friends with my cousin. I messaged her when I found out because I thought she might know what happened to him and that she'd want to know if she didn't already. It was one of those situations where I wanted to tell her not to look where it was posted, but then she'd know there was something to see and might look for it. Alas, she saw it and said it made her skin crawl. During further research, I did to try to find out what happened to my cousin. She messaged my mother as if he just died, but he'd been dead for over 6 months. My mother figured she ran out of shoulders to cry on. I saw her complaining after her son's death, complaining that the rehab facilities she sent him to didn't refund her money. Just, wow. Reply 3. Trauma vulture is a great term for this. My mom likes to talk about her kid, who is a cancer survivor, and will ask if I tell people what I went through. I had very early stage cancer that required surgery and no further treatment to be cured. I don't consider myself a cancer survivor. I just had one surgery. Response 6. Well, I don't like it either when someone spreads my diagnosis. I mean, I don't have something life-threatening. It's MS, but it's inappropriate to spread it when it doesn't concern your own health. Coworker talked about it to her best friend that doesn't work in our shop anymore. I was fuming. We ourselves decide who we tell and who we don't. We can't control PPL, but as your wife, she should have the empathy and brain to know who and how you are and not overstep your boundaries. You are married for a while. She absolutely has to know that you hate attention, not the a-hole. Reply 1. This, OP is not the a-hole. Not everybody wants to be posted on SM. If it's something life-changing and important, I'll post it myself. My good news, though shared with people close to me, is not your news to share. Reply 2. This was the worst part for me. Regardless of whether or not OP likes attention, under no circumstances is it okay to post about someone else's private medical diagnosis on social media. I would feel so violated if this happened to me. I'm sorry it happened to OP. Response 7, NTA. She's TA for making your medical situation public against your wishes. Are there other boundaries she has ignored? Was she seeking collateral attention? Doing so is very selfish of her. Response 8. It sounds like you're in a tough spot, not the a-hole for wanting to maintain your privacy and handle your health matters in a low-key manner. It's important for your preferences to be respected, especially in such personal matters. While your wife likely had good intentions in celebrating your remission, understanding each other's boundaries and communication styles is crucial in a marriage. It might be beneficial to have a calm, open discussion about how each of you prefers to handle personal victories and challenges going forward. This way, you can ensure that both of your needs and comfort levels are respected. Reply 1. Took a bit of scrolling before someone mentions calm talking. He's definitely not the a-hole. But I get the feeling that the wife did want attention. But because she was so worried, I think she wanted support. Even with chances that low, worrying is normal, and this reads like OP didn't really take her worries seriously. Not defending her in any way, but I don't think what she did had malicious intent. They need to have a talk about their feelings during this time. Reply 2. Since he claims to have an analytical mind and to be very private, we also don't know how emotionally available or secretive he is to his wife about his work, health, and life outside the home. It's possible that he has downplayed problems in the past when disclosing them to her, only for them to become more serious later in spite of his insistence that they're not important / don't need to be discussed. If I had a spouse who had a history of being secretive and private even to me, then I would be skeptical if that spouse went to the trouble of sharing a cancer diagnosis with me, but also downplayed its severity. We only have one side of the story, and I know this subreddit tends to prefer an interpretation where a given OP is the only rational actor in an entire cast of insane, irrational characters, but it's not necessarily the case that this woman's actions were selfish or irrational. Reply 3. Imaging having to comfort, console, and support your wife when you're the one with the cancer diagnosis. Apparently, he tried repeatedly to calm her down about it to no avail. Honestly, she sounds a bit exhausting. Regardless of whether her intentions were malicious, they weren't. She still completely ignored and disrespected his boundaries by not only sharing the information, but making a mountain out of a molehill and throwing a huge party that he would never have wanted, likely even for anything he deemed actually worth celebrating. I'd be willing to bet quite a bit that he's tried the calm talking. Reply 4. Right, this is a communication plus expectations issue. I get that she might be the kind of person who has trouble keeping things that are bothering her and may be prone to trauma dumping online. But not being her diagnosis, it's not hers to share, and she needs to take his feelings into account. Maybe she would like these things done for her, but OP is not her. This is a conversation they need to have, and she needs to take things less personally and instead consider how he's different than her. Treating others as you would like to be treated isn't always 100% literal. Also, surprise parties are kinda obnoxious in general, unless you know the person likes stuff like that. Response 9. I'm going to go against the grain and say no a-holes here. Just two very different methods of coping with a medical scare. I totally understand where you're coming from. However, I don't think you're considering her feelings. Why should her feelings matter? OP is the one who had cancer. Very true. Except, OP, you weren't very bothered by it. While your wife was terrified the entire time. Not only was she terrified, but when she talked about it on her Facebook, she got her hand slapped and had to take it down. Again, I really empathize with you not wanting anyone to know your business. But at the same time, this very young woman with 2 small children was terrified that her husband, and I'm guessing main or even sole provider, and father of her children could die or become permanently disabled. Presumably, you had to go into medical facilities for treatment, and despite what we're all telling ourselves, we're still in the middle of a pandemic. What if you caught COVID? What if it wound up permanently disabling you? A heart problem, blindness. What if you couldn't work anymore? What if the diagnosis was wrong and your very treatable cancer was actually something more malignant? What if this was caused by a genetic predisposition for cancer? You say you are very analytic and instantly understood the statistics and weren't worried, which is great. Not everyone is like that, and someone can simultaneously understand that the odds of something bad happening are slim and still be upset at the possibility, especially if the bad thing is one that would upend their entire life. You were thinking, damn, this is going to be inconvenient, and she was thinking, I don't want to be a widow at 32. And then essentially you said, don't talk to anyone about my health, which also meant not being able to talk about these anxieties. And while you were happy to go back to normal after confirming remission, she was like a tightly wound spring, suddenly releasing all that tension and decided to throw a party. I think people are being really judgmental about her motivation. You know her better than us. So maybe they're right and she's a drama vampire. Or maybe she's legitimately so relieved and happy that she wanted to celebrate. Have you actually talked to her about her fears? Not just dismissing them and assuring her everything will be okay, but giving her a chance to share how she feels about all this and just be heard? And does she have any experience with cancer or health scares, or not trusting medical opinions that might have contributed to her reaction to this? Anyway, I don't know, just wanted to posit an alternate explanation. My dad is a lot like you, OP, so he doesn't tell any of his family and discourages my mom from sharing with hers, and as a result, she has felt very isolated. And when he's had problems, that also means she's carrying the entire load because he won't share with anyone else. In terms of logistics like organizing appointments, but also just the mental drain of worrying, but keeping up the facade of normality because it's what he wants. It's a lot to ask of a partner, and it's kind of crappy to act like asking someone to carry on and keep their worries to themselves isn't asking anything of them at all. Reply 1. Had to scroll far, far too low for this comment. Thank you for going against the grain and restoring my faith in humanity rather than vilifying a scared spouse who's clearly struggling. Reply 2. as a woman who recently in the last few months also had skin cancer removed from my face. I also think no a-holes here. It was really insightful reading this post because I had the complete opposite situation occur. My boyfriend seemed completely unbothered by what I was going through and emotionally shut down. I would have loved the support OP got from his wife, except the Facebook posts. I really think this comes down to coping mechanisms. I think she was so relieved this chapter of your story was finished. She wanted to scream and celebrate from the rooftops. Like my partner and I, perhaps you have different love languages. Reply 3, this is how I read it. He mentions twice that he can't understand why his wife did something and why she wouldn't know him well enough to know how he'd feel. I strongly suspect that if his wife were to post here, she'd be saying the exact same things. She's probably assuming he's trying to put on a brave face, but must be scared / anxious / relieved / whatever, because she can't imagine how he could not be. He had to rationalize why he didn't want to tell the kids in order for her to understand because it's so foreign to her, and I think her posting on Facebook wasn't devious at all because she really did take him at face value that they wouldn't understand was the reason to not tell. Why wouldn't he want his dad to know that he's going through something? I also think the kids and dad support the reading that OP doesn't realize how much his business impacts the people around him. For my part, my parents concealed my mom's first diagnosis from us for months until school finished for the year because my dad didn't want us to worry and be distracted from our final exams. I'm sure this was perfectly rational to him, but the result was, 1, my mom had to literally hide her feelings and not talk about something that was, I'm sure, consuming most of her thoughts, and 2, this sort of cemented a lack of trust, anxiety about being kept in the dark in my sibling and I. We literally had nightmares about bad things happening, a relative dying, a disaster, whatever, and our parents not telling us. It also felt pretty crap to be told basically, we didn't want you using this as an excuse not to study or something. OP, please remember this comment when eventually your kids learn about dad's cancer scare when you were little, and take note of the surprise on their faces. What else did they have no idea what was going on? I think you missed an opportunity to gently introduce your kids to some unpleasant parts of life. Grown-ups, including mom and dad, can get sick. Here's how we can talk about being sick. Here's how we can process emotions like worry. Here's how we can be kind and considerate even if we're stressed, etc. Do you think your health is none of their business? Do you realize how much your mood when you get home impacts their worlds at this age? You don't think they want to know when daddy is going through something scary? Are you afraid of appearing fallible and human? Do you want them to learn to conceal their problems or stresses, to nobly spare others from ever helping them shoulder burdens? You have 2 little sponges taking everything in, including what you don't show them. Sin, I hope you talk to your boyfriend and let him know how you feel and that you appreciate his stalwart stoicism but would also like to be able to share your worries with him without them being minimized or dismissed, and to actually see some evidence of concern from him. Reply 4. Thank you for posting this comment. Why does everyone automatically think that the wife has nefarious motives? It's a scary thought, losing your spouse. Response 10 NTA. There's no way on earth your wife could think that you would want this kind of celebration. The party is really a violation of your privacy and a betrayal of your trust. Response 11 NTA. Your wife needs counseling to better respect and understand you and your boundaries. How you describe your response to the party sounds extremely diplomatic. See a marriage counselor together. You will sometimes need to go beyond your comfort zone, which you apparently understand already, but not in the way your wife forces you. She has a lot she needs to learn. Congrats on your diagnosis. Good luck. Response 12. NTA for leaving the party or being upset for her throwing a party. But I also don't think your wife was an actual AH here. At least I can't just jump on the she's so selfish, she needs attention bandwagon. Yeah, she shouldn't have thrown you the party and you were okay to leave it under the circumstances. But from your post, your wife seems like a caring wife who sincerely was scared she may lose her husband, no matter how statically low those chances were. We don't all think in pure statistics the emotion of hearing I have cancer from your SO alone can cause a reaction. At the end of the day, sounds like no one was harmed really by the party, or by you leaving it. She removed the Facebook post immediately upon your request. What's done is done. Sounds like she loves you a lot, and congrats on not beating the odds. Wish you both the best. Reply 1. He didn't want to tell anyone he even had cancer. She had no right to divulge that against his wishes. Reply 2. No, this is a very toxic, chronic social media user take. Very narcissistic and performative. She may be struggling, but she can reach out to some friends and privately talk through that. Making a post is making a public announcement. If it was her medical information, that's different. This is about someone else's medical information that they expressly asked to not share. She's removed her partner's ability to consent, or rather expressly ignored it by making the post without asking. She didn't ask because she knew it would be a no. In fact, he already said no. He made that clear. It is not her right to post someone else's information because she needs support. She should be privately getting support from friends. This is how you know that she just wanted the attention and didn't gaffe about actual support. Reply 3. I think if you don't want to tell your kids, not posting it on social media seems like an absolute no. I can't stand the social media urge some people have. It's one thing to tell your friends in person, it's another to post it online for everyone she's ever friended to see. I'd be fuming and we'd be having issues. Reply 4. I have a story. My mother-in-law is the same way as OP. Absolutely no one is to know anything about her ever. She didn't even tell my husband she was having a medical procedure until the night before. It was an easy enough procedure, but not a super simple one. Well, what could go wrong did go wrong, and she ended up in assisted living for months. This all went down just before COVID made pandemic status, which made it worse and drug everything out much, much longer as well. Within a week after the surgery, all of her normal contacts, friends, relatives, etc., called us because they couldn't reach her. We had to keep lying, saying it was all okay. Maybe she has been busy, etc. This went on for almost 2 months, with people legit freaking out on us. Until finally my mother-in-law relented and let us tell people. She destroyed several relationships, including relationships we, my husband and I, had with people because of this. There are people still angry about this and not speaking to her nor us. The initial surgery was not a massive deal, but she really didn't want anyone knowing her business at all. And she gave my husband very explicit instructions about that too. No social media, no family, no friends, literally no one. Heck, my husband wasn't even supposed to tell me about the surgery. But he was super upset she put such restrictions on him when he was worried about his mother and needed an outlet. Reply 5. I don't think the wife is malicious, but she is selfish. You can have one without the other. I think she ultimately means well, but is so busy focusing on how she would likely want the situation dealt with if the roles were reversed that she's not listening to him and explicitly doing things she knows he doesn't like. That's selfish, regardless of the intent. Everyone has ways that they naturally show support/love during bad times. I tend to make and bring food. When I've been really ill, my grandmother has shown up to vacuum and do laundry. My friend is a big emotional check-in person. It seems his wife is more of a rally, the troops type of support person. It is important to decipher between how you want to show support and what that person actually needs. This man didn't need a party. His wife wanted to throw one. He didn't need/want the support of a Facebook post. She wanted that. I think she genuinely is coming from a place she feels is good, but it is always important to stop and think about what the person in need actually wants or needs, and not just the ways you want to show support or need to feel needed. Response 13, NTA. Not sure where your brother is coming from. Were you supposed to tell the truth and have it out with your wife in front of all those guests she invited? Or is he really thinking you were supposed to suck it up and pretend to be the gracious guest of honor? As to continued coldness between you, where did you guys leave it after your big fight? She did a really horrible thing considering she should understand clearly where you stand on surprise parties and public release of even your innocuous personal business/images, let alone a private medical matter. What explanation has she tried to give, if any, to excuse that? You owe her understanding of her worry and appreciation of her relief over the successful treatment. She owes you an apology for deliberately smashing your preference for privacy, an appreciation for your refusal to participate in her party without blowing up at her in public. Response 14. NTA, your wife violated your privacy. As a person that has to tell their mom all the time not to post anything about me and my kid, I understand. A private life is a peaceful life. Response 15. Your wife is constantly ignoring your wishes. You have a long marriage and life ahead of you, but this needs to be sorted immediately. Also, I am glad you are healthy, not the a-hole. Response 16. I get you. I had endometrial cancer, which was complete cured with a hysterectomy. No chemo, no radiation. I really don't even consider myself as really having cancer, much less survived. Not something to celebrate, especially if you are so private. Response 17. NTA. I don't know your wife, but it does appear as though she is trying to use your cancer to get attention. Twice. Attention you very clearly don't want. Response 18. I totally get where you're coming from. I had a tumor in my appendix, which is rare. It was an aggressive form of cancer. My doctor was already in there to remove my gallbladder, so she removed the appendix too because it was flipped upside down. Knew nothing about the tumor inside of it until labs came back, but she told me we needed to monitor to ensure it didn't spread. I was scared, but I only told 3 people, and to this day, most of my loved ones still don't know. It's up to you to decide what to share about your body and health. Your wife was clearly relieved and went overboard in her reaction, but I think you both need to set specific boundaries and let this be a lesson in communication moving forward. No a-holes here. Response 19. You were born an introvert. You will stay an introvert. That's who you are. She needs to deal with that. I wish people would stop using SM for everything. It is not up to her to tell your medical info. Is she trying to be the popular girl in high school? You are a practical guy. Find some info for her to read about personality types. She needs to check with you and stop oversharing. Response 20. She should never have posted that without your permission. It's your health, not hers. Wow. And the party, she either doesn't know you or just wants attention for your illness. She owes you a huge apology.